Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, I'm Cindy, and I am the director of the Accessible Education Center, and I'm very pleased to say that I've been here at the university for 25 years, working in the AEC. The Accessible Education Center is located in Admin 110, and we are here to support both the faculty, the students, and the university. And we provide curriculum accommodations, co-curricular accommodations, activities. If accommodations are needed for the students, we're here to help.
Okay. So maybe let's focus on the students today. Can you maybe give us some sense, how many staff member or counselors do you have?
So if we were to have all of our counselor positions filled, we'd have 4 counselor positions with us in the AEC. We also have specialists who work with the students in different capacities. For example, we have our Center for Accessible Technology staff that work and train with the students individually on a one-on-one on how to use accessible technology, how to assist them in meeting their curriculum needs if they need some type of accessible hardware or software technology. We have our sign language interpreters for the students who are deaf or hard of hearing in the classroom. We also have the RealTime Captioners who are actually sitting, reporting, looks like court reporting, but they're actually taking down verbatim what everyone is saying in the classroom, while the student is able to sit anywhere in the classroom and remotely be able to get that information on a mini iPad.
I see.
So they're part of the classroom. And we have those specialists. And then of course, we have other specialists. We have learning disability. We have Dr. Gary Bonanno, our educational psychologist, who will provide a full-scale psychoeducational assessment to determine the presence or non-presence of a learning disability for a student, and if not, then assess what potentially could be causing the student some difficulty in learning and go forward from there. We are in the process of hiring a new counselor now for students on the spectrum. And that counselor will be working exclusively with that population of students on the autism spectrum.
I've got so many questions already. Okay. So now, then maybe give us a sense, how many students do you support out of our total university student enrollment?
So as of fall 2017, our numbers were 1,425. However, those numbers change daily because students can register with the AEC any time in the semester all the way up until final exams, the day before final exams. So for example, we're now just beginning the spring semester, and in one day, 11 new students came in who are new to the AEC requesting to meet with a counselor. That will happen throughout the semester, so I can be asked, what is the number today? And that number will be as good as it is for that moment and change respectively.
I see. Now, maybe you could share with us, what is this process? A student register, enroll in our university first, and then somehow, they register with you. How do they disclose their information? How do you verify?
That's a good question. So our program is volunteer. Students with disabilities are not required to register with the Accessible Education Center. However, they can be self-referred. They can be referred by their faculty member. They can be referred by a friend or their parent. Anyone who may think, just from having a conversation, hearing the student talk about their struggles in learning or struggles in a class, can say, do you know about the educational center, Accessible Education Center? So at which point, then the student can come in and talk with someone at the front desk about the process of registering. They can email us and ask about that process. They can phone us. All 3 different ways, they're going to hear the same answer. We have a system that allows the student to begin the registration process online 24/7. It's called My AEC. And they simply go online. On our main webpage, the link is right there, and they create what's called a student profile. And once they've completed that profile, it takes about 10 minutes just to get basic information. The final message they get sent to their email address says now to schedule an appointment, to meet with a counselor, and to submit your documentation. which
So they have to provide some kind of
they
medical
must.
documentation,
Right.
right?
And so
Okay.
providing the documentation, whatever the nature of that documentation is, and under California state law and ADA, that documentation can vary widely because the two different laws actually determine similarly, but yet there's a difference under HEHA, who's a qualified licensed practitioner. So the student, when they meet with the counselor, it's an intake meeting, and it's to discuss their eligibility. Okay. So we have to determine, are they eligible for services? First of all,
Oh,
do they meet the criterion of having a disability? That's
Okay.
the very first step that the
so
counselor.
they could be disapproved or?
Correct. They
Oh.
may not qualify,
Okay.
and that does happen. They
Oh.
may not qualify for services, and that's why that documentation is essential. It's the beginning step in determining that process. It's called an interactive process. It's a legal process we're required to go through under the ADA and HEHA. And so we begin that process. If the student has used accommodations historically somewhere, K through 12, or maybe even at a community college or
Yes.
another post-secondary education system, we will ask them. We'll
Okay.
get a student self-report on
Okay.
what they were using for services, why they were using the services, was it the similar disability, was there a change? There's many, many questions we have to go through. And then, if the student is new and has never used services before, because they may have a newly diagnosed condition,
Right.
and that happens in life. We have students with acquired brain injury from a car accident.
Yes.
We have students who are going under chemotherapy for cancer or lupus or some other, and the list goes on and on. It's non-exhaustive.
I see.
And so we'll make those determinations. And then
You
we,
mentioned HEHA. What is
FEHA.
FEHA.
FEHA is the California equivalent to ADA, and it's the Fair Employment and Housing Act.
Okay.
That's the law that we have to start in considering a student's eligibility.
Okay.
It is, the eligibility for services under FEHA is less stringent than it is under ADA. And
Okay.
because we live in California, we have to begin there with that consideration for eligibility.
Okay. Now, how long will this process? I mean, you said complete in form is 10, 15 minutes, and then I have to sit down with you.
Counselor
with
for
the
an hour.
counselor, right?
For
an
at
hour,
least
okay.
an hour, depending on, it really depends. Again, everything is case by case, but they'll always have that initial meeting for an hour with lots and lots of discussion. The student self-report is extremely important, and also their major and the classes that they're enrolled in. Let me give you an example. If a student has a diagnosis of dyscalculia, so that's a specific learning disability where they have the inability to perform math, cannot.
Yeah.
And their major is in business. Business requires math.
Yes.
So how do you work with that,
Right.
right? So basically, we cannot substitute courses like we
Okay.
could if they were in perhaps a history class where math is not required. We could substitute a critical thinking course for the math requirement. So then for that, we would have to look at some reasonable accommodations to assist the student. But an accommodation, it's so important as we inform the students, is that we're here to support you and help you. But an accommodation does not guarantee success. It guarantees that you're able to demonstrate your knowledge and your abilities and your skills without the limitation being the impact, showing first what you can't do. So it levels that playing field.
Would this be in time for the student to get receive accommodation? You know, because I would envision the beginning of the semester, all of a sudden, tons of students
Yeah.
come into your office and they're all waiting for accommodation. And you said I have to wait for how many, you know?
Right, right. And that's a very good question. So returning students do not have to come for an intake. So
Okay.
they're going
They
to
don't
go
need to renew the
online.
process. Oh, they still need to
Right.
renew the process.
They still need to request their accommodations
Request
that
accommodation.
are already in the system.
Okay.
And they go in there and they just click, click, click to ask that request. We'll approve it.
Okay.
After, you know, and that process doesn't take long on AEC side.
This
And
is
then
on an annual basis or semester?
Semesterly basis.
Semester basis, okay.
So the accommodations must, you know, be necessary to support that curriculum requirement. And so if there's a change in the student's disability, say, unfortunately, they're getting worse, or it's taking longer for the medication to work. Any change, they need to have a conversation with us to request new accommodations, or to request some type of, a medical leave, or talk about how can I do this if I can't come to class, I'm in the hospital, but I'll be out 2 weeks later. All of those require, and we will meet with the student and have that appointment on the phone, anything that's convenient for them, because we don't want to exacerbate a condition. But those are required because, again, we have to make sure in the best interest of the university, that's the student, the faculty, and the learning, that, we're supporting them.
Yeah, they need to get accommodation in time for their
So
school.
in terms of the timeliness, basically, the students who are returning, like I said, that's easy. As soon as they go online and request it, that notification is shot out to the faculty member, right? New students are going to be coming in on a regular basis because of whenever they're, self-referred, or whenever somebody has referred them, etc. They're coming in all the time. And so, yes, you're absolutely correct. There is going to be a timeline. There's not enough counselors to meet with the students. So there may be a couple weeks wait. If they're lucky, they can get in. I always encourage the students to, as soon as they even think about they may want accommodation, make that appointment.
Okay. So, again, I've got tons of questions. So let's talk in general. Is there any kind of a general types of disability, or is that appropriate term to discuss about this at our university?
So disability is defined in 2 categories under the law. You have obvious and
Visible one?
yes, or not obvious. Obvious is the word used under the law.
Okay.
But you're right, the apparent one that you can see and the one that you cannot see. Okay? So those are the classifications, and under those classifications, the list can just be non-exhaustive. So we're looking at your, the ones that commonly people recognize: sensory, blind, visually impaired, deaf, hard of hearing. We have a large number of the students with those limitations on campus. As well, most people are familiar with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder,
Which is not observable.
which is not observable. Learning disability, which is not observable. And many of the psychiatric mental health, non-observable. As well, we have students with medical conditions. We have students who have organ transplants, students with liver, with lupus, students with cancer. And that list goes on and on. And one of our growing populations is the autism. Students on the spectrum, autism spectrum, okay? And those students, depending on if you really understand what autism is in that look, you may or may not know there's a difference. Right, but you can't really always say, because each of us has a different affect. We all have a different look. We have students who are nonverbal, do not speak at all on our campus, and we have students who have difficulty in communicating for various reasons. It's amazing that with medicine the way it is, more and more individuals with disabilities are becoming independent and coming to school and going to work.
You mentioned about the accommodation process already, so the decision will be made at some point in time. Well, you mentioned, does that mean all the faculty, each faculty, they have an AEC student, registered student enrollment, then they will get a letter from you?
Correct.
Okay.
They will get some kind of notification.
Oh.
It comes through our system automatically. So my AEC is synced up with CMS. So we automatically know what classes the student is in, and we know all the faculty information. And so once we have approved those accommodations after the student has requested, then that information is sent directly to that faculty on the email in which they have put into the system. And so they will receive that. Beyond that, there are times where the counselor will need to have a conversation with the faculty member. A good example of that is a student who's in a wheelchair. And let's say there's a field trip. And the field trip happens to be to a park with dirt and hills. The student in the wheelchair most likely is going to have a very, very difficult time trying to traverse that terrain. They're not going to be able to. But yet, they're still needing to learn, observe, and write on and do the project for whatever that learning outcome is. So we will talk with the faculty member and we'll ask them, for example, what is the goal of this field trip? What is that learning objective? And they'll talk with us and tell us, and we'll say, okay, is